Not the first time we've had on Jack Posobiec, but we're always lucky to have him on because he's in the news all the time. And most importantly, at this moment, he has a new book out called Citizens for Trump, which officially launches on Saturday, I think it is, though you can already order it or buy it on Amazon. And Jack, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, Adam, it's really great to be here. Appreciate it. You know, it's great. You know, I'm an author now, right? I've got a book out. It's amazing. You know, back in our college days, we used to just run around on campus with signs and American flags. But now, you know, look at the two of us.
Right. Where did you go to college, by the way? I don't even know.
At Temple.
Oh, you were at Temple. Okay, so you're really a Philly guy. See, I departed for Boston when I went to college and then spent some time in New York.
That's okay. No one's perfect.
Yeah, and Jack is from, wait, you're not a Delaware County guy. You're a Montgomery County guy because you're from Norristown?
Monco guy from Norristown, yeah.
Monco. So he doesn't have as thick an accent as a lot of the guests I have on who are from Delaware County and South Jersey.
I can slip into my Delco. I can speak Delco. You know, I can speak a little Delco.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, we always love that here. Jack
excuse me. You don't speak Delco. You talk Delco. I talk.
There you go.
Yeah.
I had on what's his name? Cage, the airplane repo the other day, and I had on the McLaughlins, and the accents were very thick on that day. But okay, as long as you can slip into it. Full disclosure, Delaware County is largely Irish Catholic and Italian Catholic, and Jack is very diverse from that, being Polish Catholic. So I'm just giving you a feel for the Philadelphia area. So tell us about Citizens for Trump, your work, how the book emerged, and how basically you became a star in the last year. I remember meeting you for the first time in Aston, Pennsylvania back in September.
Well, yeah, so I appreciate that. You know, I worked with the organization Citizens for Trump all last year. We did a lot of work with Roger Stone. We were actually the largest grassroots organization for President Trump throughout the country in 2016, did so much stuff, Stop the Steal campaign. And essentially what this book is, it's sort of a write-up of a lot of that, and then just my own stuff behind the scenes, things that were going on, things I was hearing. I've worked in 4 different presidential elections in the past,
okay.
And now we're also seeing some of the insider stuff, where like what was going on with the GOP coup. I actually lay that out in full detail in a chapter in the book here. The GOP coup against President Trump, with the Access Hollywood tapes, trying to get him to drop out. And then I also go through and lay down in very discreet detail the deluge of fake news media. I go through every single instance, all the way going back to the Tea Party, of fake news that's been propagated against the right by the mainstream media.
Can you give us some teasers without cannibalizing your book sales?
Yeah, sure. So, some of the fake news regarding Hillary's health is a huge one. I mean, all the times that it was called a conspiracy theory to talk about Hillary's health, where they told us she was fine. The pickle jar incident. You remember the pickle jar incident, right? With
no, I completely forgot. What I remember there was on.
So when
yes.
it first started coming out, we were talking about Hillary's stools and the fact that, hey, there's a stool every time she goes on stage somewhere. She's got this stool. What is the stool? What's going on
right.
here? And so with Hillary's stools, we then started to notice that, and it also she needs to be held up at times. She has this coughing issue. What's going on with her health? So with all this coming on in the wake of that, she goes on the Jimmy Kimmel show and she says, "Well, Jimmy, look how strong I am. I can open a pickle jar." And then she goes and opens the pickle jar, which we later find out was actually a pre-opened pickle jar that was put on the stage. And there was some kind of, it reminded me of Chairman Mao swimming in the Yangtze River, to prove he was healthy in one of his later years of life. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, I didn't get it because, it seemed so ham-handed, even if she really opened it, which, you can't verify that it wasn't pre-opened, but my grandmother had Alzheimer's for like 10 years.
Imagine if Trump tried something like that, the amount of ridicule he'd be getting. He's going around opening pickle jars on camera.
But it was just so sloppy because my grandmother had Alzheimer's, but she still had a lot of her physical strength. The issues weren't related to...
My Polish grandma, she could open a pickle jar just by looking at it.
Well, that's a different story. But even people with Alzheimer's who have serious health issues don't necessarily lose all their physical strength for something like that. It wouldn't have been indicative of anything. And people could see right through that. I just didn't get it. Was that a sign of just how stupid the people were around her, how botched her campaign was?
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot in the book, the idea that, the fact that they couldn't get people out of her rallies, the fact that every time they tried a different method, every time they tried a different tactic, they were tone deaf. They couldn't talk to anyone outside of their own base. She had no message for why she wanted to be president other than, it's my turn. Yep. I'm owed this. And they had no idea how to talk to middle America. They had no idea how to talk to the working class. They completely overlooked what they call flyover country. And that's why, thanks to Hillary Clinton, I guess we owe her a little bit of thanks, because that's why the Democrat Party at this point is a bi-coastal party. It is not a national party. And we're seeing sort of they're trying to push back right now against that in Georgia today. And that's why it's so big for them, because they need to show to their donor base, the mega donors of the Democrat Party, that, hey, we can stand a fighting chance in some of these red areas, because right now things do not look good for the Democrat Party, and it's largely the fault of Hillary Clinton, her campaign, the DNC, their malfeasance, the way they rigged everything against Bernie just so Hillary could get there in the first place, and then they still couldn't even win the general.
Do you think Pajama Boy actually has a chance of winning tonight?
So it's tough to say, right? I'm not that up on the district itself and the demographics, so I'd really have to dig into.
Well, they're changing. I mean, it's becoming more black as whites move further and further from downtown Atlanta. Okay. No one wants to mention that. It's changed a little bit in the last few decades.
Yeah, that's something that we see in southeastern Pennsylvania, where more and more people are moving out of Philadelphia, and they're bringing their politics with them, turning those traditionally Republican suburbs from red to this purple now. And I think this is most likely what's happening on the cusp of that district. And so what remains to be seen is, will the outreach of Handel be enough to go out there? And I've actually got a guy who's on the ground right now that's sending me updates. He's saying there's a 5-to-1 sign ratio for the Republican versus Pajama Boy.
But that often doesn't mean anything when you're dealing with a city, because that's true in every presidential election, because the benefit, the strength is in the cities. In black neighborhoods, you just don't have that many roads with yards where people can put up signs. So, of course, someone appeals to rural voters is going to have an advantage that way.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, because when they're nationalizing an election like this,
right,
and they're bringing in so many people out of the district, and then we're already hearing reports of electioneering issues and voting issues that people are having. So it's going to be very tricky to see what actually comes out at the end. I mean, it's a gut fight, it's a street fight right now, and it's going to be, regardless of what side wins, I think it's going to be very, very close. I worked on Jim Gerlach's campaign in 2006, and that actually was the previous most expensive race in U.S. history, congressional race.
No kidding.
And it was close, and the way that race was won was by outreach to non-traditional voters, but finding those pockets of voters in the district that didn't usually come out to vote, and it's tough, right? Because how do you find someone that you don't have data for from voter rolls? Going out to them and making the case why your candidate is best. And in many ways, it echoes what Trump was able to do in 2016 by generating a huge movement of buzz from the non-traditional voter base to come out to the polls.
Yeah, and it certainly may have overreached in some cases in Atlanta by the fact, quite simply, that Kathy Griffin got behind John Ossoff. And those non-traditional voters are not going to be Kathy Griffin fans. That overreach may have cost them a lot of votes, quite possibly.
No, it's unhelpful for her. The thing with Kathy Griffin, and I don't know if you heard, there was the Shakespeare play going on in
8 minutes in. I waited 8 minutes till I even brought that up. Let's talk about that.
So I
and Jack, before that, thank you for getting Laura Loomer on my show yesterday. I really appreciate that.
I appreciate it. Yeah, Laura, she's a good friend, and I love that this is how she's really breaking out into the media. I could not be happier. I met Laura about 6 months ago. She came to the Deplore Ball. I've known her from her work with Project Veritas, her work with Pamela Geller. I think it's great what she's doing now, and I really, really hope to see her more. And people are saying to me, they say, Jack, well, she's getting all of the limelight. And I'm like, dude, we're up against billionaires right now. We need to build up people. We need more people doing stuff like this. I wish there were 10 more Laura Loomers right now, and I hope there's more that are coming up. And I want to support as many people as I possibly can, because we need to develop and grow the new right rather than, squelch it down. We need more people in this.
Yeah. Well, Laura certainly was fearless there. It was Friday night, right?
Yeah, she's the real. It's funny. My fiance, the lovely Tanya Day, she said Laura Loomer is the real fearless girl.
Yeah, she is. I mean, I thought it was so funny, by the way, the other fearless girl, how they put a burqa on her. And that
was also Laura.
Oh, whoa, really? That was Laura?
Yeah, that was also Laura. Yes.
No kidding. I had no idea. I didn't even make that connection. You got to tell me these things before I interview her.
Yeah, so that was Laura, and she's also the one who went and asked Chelsea Clinton. Chelsea Clinton was doing a book signing in Manhattan, and Laura goes up to her and says, "Would you sign a book for my friend Juanita Broderick?"
That was awesome. I did see that one. Wow.
And I just got to get so yeah. She has been out there. She's been chugging. She's been doing the work. And she deserves it. She absolutely deserves it.
Well, she was a great guest, and I appreciate that. The only thing I have to give her a hard time about is if people are going to start using the anti-Semitism card on her for something she does on a Friday night. You know, maybe she could do it a different night of the week, being Jewish, Friday night, the Sabbath, and all that. So we can work with that. She's still young, you know, so we can do that. But speaking of which, what's going?
It's that raw energy, man. What can I say?
Yeah, we'll just channel it for the other 6 nights of the week. But that's something we can work on long term. But what's the deal with Baked Alaska, and putting her in a gas chamber in a picture with Trump pushing the button as if he's not Ivanka's father and Jared's father-in-law? Like, what's going on with all that?
Yeah, so I think, I haven't talked to him specifically about that, but I think what you're seeing from, in general, there's a lot of anti-Semitism out there, and I think that there's a lot of people who, for one reason or another on the Internet, saw the fact that she was Jewish, and they were also very critical of me for bringing up Joseph Goebbels, saying, I said that the people who are producing that play, I said Goebbels would be proud, because of his propaganda work. And they were very upset with me for, I guess, besmirching the name of a dead Nazi. But, what can I say? I mean, my grandfather fought against the Nazis. That was a war. I think most people would.
Is that in Poland or for the U.S.?
That was for the U.S. So his grandfather had come over, but then he went and enlisted just after Pearl Harbor and was able to go serve.
The thing is, the one difference I would say with Goebbels is Goebbels used a more overt approach. Like, the thing that gets me so much about the left is that they insert it in places where it's not appropriate. They stick it in very subtly. It's a much more refined way of propaganda than in National Socialist Germany.
That's exactly my point. Yeah, that's exactly my point. Goebbels would be so proud at how good you are at propaganda. It's propaganda without people realizing it's propaganda. You don't have to. There isn't a huge DNC logo on the on the stage, or there isn't a huge people wearing the armbands or something. But it's propaganda nonetheless, and that's what we've seen a lot with Saturday Night Live, John Oliver, The Daily Show. They've weaponized comedy, and now they're weaponizing Shakespeare for political purposes. They're weaponizing it to get their political message across. However, in this case, and let me tell you something, this show is very disrespectful towards Melania, towards all Republicans, making fun of Melania's voice. Oh, yeah, people don't talk about that as much.
Well, tell us. I didn't see it. It's over now. But
let's hear what... I had to sit through an hour of this crap before we did our little interruption. And they have her come out on stage, and she's like, "Oh, Julius, I love you, my husband. Come to me in the bathtub." Like, they change the lines that they're actually said. They're not just saying Shakespearean lines. They're actually adding new lines to it. They call it a reimagination. And so it's funny that after the disruption, they said, "Hey, this is just Shakespeare." No, excuse me. You went and changed a lot of things from the original play to make it anti-Trump. And you're glorifying the violence. You're glorifying this brutality. And I'm going to tell you something. This is brutal. This was like Quentin Tarantino level blood and gore. And to be honest, and politics aside, right? Politics aside, to watch them portray this guy who's a father, who's a grandfather, a living American citizen, be slaughtered like that, and then hearing the crowd applauding it, they're clinking their bracelets together in this Manhattan crowd of elites. Just us. Oh yes, that's what needs to be done. Laughing and cheering. I mean, it was bizarre. It made my blood run cold, Adam. It was weird, man.
Did they even try to justify it? Well, this is just about the power of the office, and it just happens to be that Trump is in office right now, and if it were 3 years ago, it would have been Obama. We would have done the exact same thing. Did anyone even try to make that argument?
They're trying to make that argument, but they're doing it after the fact, after we called them out. They're trying to say that, and they're trying to say, oh, no, it's actually an anti-assassination play, and we all kind of turn on and said, nobody's talking about. So in Shakespeare's original, right, and in the original version, it's the idea that Caesar gets assassinated, and it's a tragedy. Caesar is a tragic figure, and there's like sad music playing in the movie version when he gets.
And Brutus is a tragic figure too.
Right, and then Rome collapses, and that's the tragedy, that Rome collapses after
right.
they go down this disastrous path. But in this one, it's not, there's laughs, there's comedy, there's humor. It's like a joke that he gets assassinated, and that to me was repugnant. And for them to then turn around and say, "Oh, this is just Shakespeare," no. I would say brush up on your Shakespeare, to coin the phrase, and it's no, you went and changed. You took a lot of liberties with this. You're twisting Shakespeare around, and that's why we had to call them out on it. Because certainly in the wake, and look, I'm all for art and I'm all for satire. I get it. I get it. It's fine. I do satire myself all the time. But in the wake of the horrific, this assassination attempt, the terrorist attack on Steve Scalise, the guy had a list of congressmen he wanted to take out, start shooting them up with an AK-47 knockoff. To still go on with this, the show must go on while the guy's life is clinging, in the ICU. I just thought it was very distasteful, and I was sick of it. And to kind of go back, we talked about Kathy Griffin and her ISIS propaganda film. We talked about Antifa that's been running through the streets using a bike lock to, attack people that are being Trump supporters. Actually, breaking news. I can actually break some news. I'm in the middle of writing the article. It just broke on Poll and a few other places today that one of the editors, the main editor of Antifa's website, It's Going Down, is a UC Berkeley professor.
No kidding. Doesn't shock me at all.
Yeah, and he's like a professor of like plants and gardening or something.
Really?
Yeah, and it's funny. So he hasn't even really been trying to hide it, and that's what's funny, is because he does a podcast, and so people were just kind of like listening to the podcast, and then they were going and looking at his lecture videos, and they're like, yeah, this is the same guy.
Academic freedom, I suppose. You know what's funny?
Yeah, I guess so. Academic freedom, man.
I have to mention this because you talked about satire and the would-be assassin in Alexandria, Virginia. Is it just me, or does the guy really remind you of Walter from The Big Lebowski?
He reminds me a lot of Walter, very, very much of Walter from The Big Lebowski. The other one that I was saying it reminded me of, because of the sunglasses and the fact that he waited like 2 months before he did it, just planning the whole thing. Mark David Chapman, the guy who assassinated John Lennon.
What are the similarities there? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, there's a couple of movies that have been done on that, but the idea that, so Mark David Chapman, he lives in Hawaii, flew out to New York specifically for this, decided he didn't want to do it, flies back to Hawaii, hangs out there for a couple more weeks, then comes back to New York a second time, and, waits out at the Dakota, gets the, Sgt. Pepper signed by Lennon, waits all day for Lennon to come back with his wife, and then shoots him in the back. Literally just stands there in front of the building and then shoots him in the back as he comes in. So when I heard this guy was living out of a van for 8 weeks in the Alexandria area, having lived originally in like a Chicago suburb, and then just like gave up his job, gave away his possessions, left his wife, and moved to Alexandria, lived with his van for 8 weeks. I was like, man, it was eerie. It was really eerie. Yeah,
interesting. Though obviously Mark David Chapman had something more going on than he simply hated John Lennon, which is the case here, obviously fueled by Bernie Sanders, etc., where he identified. What was, just because I'm curious, and I know it's off topic, but what was Mark David Chapman's motivation? It wasn't hatred for Lennon.
So he was sort of read this, that, I mean, the I guess the popular version is that he read Catcher in the Rye and believed that the writer, J.D. Salinger, was actually speaking to him, Mark David Chapman, as the reader, and telling him that he needs to get rid of the fakers in society, and that he believed that John Lennon was a huge faker. He was someone who actually was a huge Beatles fan, but then got upset that John Lennon, kind of didn't always live up to the ideals of his lyrics, and and then decided that he had to go do something about it after reading J.D. Salinger's work, which was, I mean, the biggest twisting of words you could see. What we saw with this guy in Alexandria, James T. Hodgkinson, was he was a firm believer in this Russia conspiracy theory. He thought President Trump, our president, duly elected, democratically elected, was a traitor. He was a huge fan of John Oliver and Rachel Maddow, and he thought that the only way to stop the traitor from taking over Russia, for Russia taking over the United States with this like Manchurian candidate kind of conspiracy theory, was to actually go and start murdering people.
Got it. I can't help but wonder with Mark David Chapman, if he thought that about Lennon, what did he think about Ringo Starr, George Harrison, and Paul McCartney, who were a lot more pop and would-be phony than Lennon was? I mean, Lennon definitely did some quirky things with his music and probably, at least for the first few years, had the least successful post-Beatles pop career, I would guess. I mean, very strange.
No, I mean, when he was putting out, what was that album he did? It was like all just sounds, like random sounds. It was him and Yoko. Right. And they were like banging glasses together and put out an album of it. And it was bizarre.
It's not phony. It's just bizarre, I would think. But okay, whatever. Let me ask another question. You've emerged. There were lots of people who've done things like Citizens for Trump. And you were the guy who, along with guys like Mike Cernovich, Paul Joseph Watson, who was known through InfoWars more than anything else. But you've emerged as the guy. Do you have more energy than the other people who sort of tried to do similar things? What accounts for your success, in your opinion?
There's part of me that is still kind of asking myself that question every day. I appreciate the audience so much that does support me, that does give me support, that's been going and purchasing copies of Citizens for Trump. We actually just broke the 10,000 ranking on all of Amazon, which
nice.
For a self-published book is like unheard of, they're telling me.
Mm-hmm.
And I really just, I don't know, I do a lot of Periscopes. I try to be, and Periscope is a live stream where I'm talking directly to the camera. And I try to just be very positive and genuine and say, this is who I am, this is where I am. And I really try to push hard, man. I try to be wherever I can be. I try to get the story. I try to get the scoop. And, people are always saying, they turn around and say, Jack, something's going on with Shakespeare. Jack's there. Something's going with Hillary. Jack's there. Something's going with the president. Jack's there. So I try to, it's a lot of traveling, a lot of hours. I'm on my second car of the whole like Trump era actually already. Mm-hmm. So it's just been, a lot of sleepless nights and always working. And that comes from having, blue collar mindset. I mean, I grew up working construction in Philly. I worked at Corporate League Bakery in Norristown for many, many years.
Uh-huh.
And just, I go out there every day and I try to do the work. And that is what I'm going to continue to do. And I appreciate so much that people are tuning in. And it's about the message too. I think it's really about the message. And people are like, well, Jack, you're trying to do this, trying to do that. You're just trying to make a name for yourself. And I was like, well, I am me. I can't stop being me. But
right. You can't not make a name for yourself doing what you're doing.
But exactly. But I try to put the message first. I try to say, what can I do to develop the message? For example, this Sunday, we're going to be holding an anti-political violence rally on the steps of I think the park right behind the White House.
Right.
So we're having it there. We're talking to Ann Coulter. We're talking to the Oath Keepers. A lot of people bring them out. Laura's going to be speaking there. And I've actually invited the entire cast of Shakespeare to come and stand with us at this anti-political violence event, as well as Jake Tapper from CNN and Hillary Clinton herself, who I understand still lives in the D.C. area, because I want them to come out. This should be a unite both sides of the aisle kind of thing. We should all stand against political violence, and we'll see if they come up.
I do want to go back a little to your psychology, though. I mean, I had Lenny Dykstra on the show like for 2 hours worth. I put it over 3 shows, and then I had him on very briefly yesterday just to answer another question.
One of my childhood heroes. What can I say? Sitting there in at the vet actually, I'm watching Lenny Dykstra.
But on a serious note, we're talking about his career with the Phillies, not the Mets there. But on a serious note, have you read Moneyball and seen what Billy Beane said about him? And it just applies to you, I think, as well. You don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
I've read Moneyball. I can't remember the exact quote.
Okay, he said Billy Beane was a first-round pick. I think Dykstra was 12th round or something, and undersized, too small to make the majors. And he said he really had doubts about himself and his ability because he took it too seriously and his self-doubts, and he realized when he came in contact with Lenny that he never would have the right, perfect mindset, which Lenny had because he never met anyone who could just blow off any failure he had, which of course is 7 out of 10 times at bat when you're a good hitter, and draw from every single success and just say, I'm going to get this done, and be so determined and know that you're going to get that done. And that reminds me of you because, okay, someone says something bad about you. I don't care. I'm just keeping going. I know you're not a Ben Shapiro guy, but he's like that too.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from on that, and that's definitely a mindset that I share. It's like, look, I try to do so much stuff. I step in it, from you said 7 out of 10. I almost feel like I'm 8 out of 10. Right? Someone says, "Hey, why did you tweet it this way? Hey, why did you say this? Hey, why did you say you got a typo here or something?" It's like, you know what I do? I guess I do. In France, when I was doing the Macron leaks campaign, when I working with Paul leaked, Emmanuel Macron's emails, and that blew up on Twitter in France. Mm-hmm. And they were calling me a neo-Nazi, and they were calling me every name under the sun, and like Le Mans, it's like the paper of record in France. And, I just had to turn around and laugh at it and say, like, wow, I've got them so riled up. I must have done something right. And, but just to look at it and to listen to people when they say, hey, Jack, you could have handled this better, and to take my lumps and to say, you know what, I owe people an apology here or an explanation. I'm not bigger than myself. I'm more than happy to do that when I've made mistakes. But I try to always give everything to the audience. I don't hold anything back. And, yeah, but when people are coming at me from the left or the far right and they're calling me this, they're calling me that, I just try to sit there and say, hey, you know what? I'm just me. I'm just Jack Posobiec. I'm a guy who's doing a Twitter account, a Facebook account, who's running around trying to help out the Trump movement. I've got a book out. You want to support that? I live my entire life in public. My fiance is always telling me, she's like, "You're going to hide anything that we do? Is everything have to be public every single moment of every day?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. We'll see." But it's people seem to like it.
Yeah, I am talking again with Jack Posobiec, author of Citizens for Trump, which you can buy on Amazon. Sorry, I haven't gotten that in enough. I've had you on for 26 minutes already. This is only the first time I mentioned that, other than that at the beginning. But I want to pay you another compliment.
Yes, it is on Amazon.
And people vote with their feet in a lot of ways. And figuratively, last week we had the terrible would-be massacre in Alexandria, and I found out about it, I guess, around 8 a.m., was on my computer. And what did I do? I went immediately. I didn't go to the news coverage. I went to your Twitter page, and I went to Paul Joseph Watson's Twitter page. And to be fair, I would have gone to Mike Cernovich's Twitter page, but he's on the West Coast, probably wasn't up yet, so there wasn't much doing there for a few hours. But that's how I digested the news and interpreted the news. And frankly, I talked about it on my show that way. I said, this is how I learned about it. This is how I interpreted it. And that's how I think people should do it right now. And, that's really, I don't know if you even have a response to that, but that's a compliment to you that you'll get right to the...
Thank you. Would be a response to that.
Okay. Let me just see. I mean, you've been generous with your time. If I have a few more minutes with you now, and you can go at any point, just some other parts of the book which people are not going to be expecting. That let's sell your book now to people.
Okay, well, yes, some other parts of the book that people are going to expect. So I go through and actually detail not only the Trump movement, but I talk about the Tea Party at great length, and I talk about how the Tea Party was in many, many ways the start of the current, I guess, populist rise in America, and even a little bit within the Occupy movement, with at least that sort of anti-elitist sentiment that I think that Trump definitely tapped into. I also go back in history, political history, and I talk about almost every populist movement in America, going all the way back to the Revolution, the Whiskey Rebellion. I talk about the original Populist Party. I talk about the Bull Moose Party under Teddy Roosevelt, all the way up to Ross Perot, Pat Buchanan. This has all, the lead up to the Trump movement and the Trump election, it's always been a strain in American politics and in the American people. And I think there's so many people that want to look at it in a vacuum and say, oh, this is just I've heard it from so many, political consultants in the D.C. area. They'll say, this is lightning in a bottle. Trump won't get reelected. This is going to be flash in the pan, one and done kind of thing. But I disagree. I think this is part of a trend that has existed in America since prior to the founding, since colonial times, really. And I think that it's not going anywhere. And it's in the past few years because of the rise of globalism and sort of conjunction with the lowering of wages, or stagnant wages at least, and increasing costs they're seeing around the country. This rise of anti-elitism, this rise of populism has been a movement that's been growing for about a decade in America. And so this Trump movement is a culmination of it rather than one simple thing because it's Donald Trump.
And that must be why the rhinos are so terrified, because it's almost they weren't that threatened by Pat Buchanan because he was never going to win. It seems to me that they're really genuinely scared.
In fact, if you actually remember, in 2000 in the Reform Party primary, Trump ran against Pat Buchanan. That was actually a lot of people don't remember that.
People forget about that.
But it was very, very brief. But when Trump announced his candidacy for president in 2000, It was actually he was in a primary against Pat Buchanan. So there was a little back and forth between the two of them.
What is it like when you deal with rhinos who I guess are acting largely like cornered rats right around now?
You know, it depends. I would say, on one hand, you've got the people that think Trump is just a nut job and he's going to destroy everything, and those guys you've got to just kind of brush off. But then you've got the other folks that come out and say, you know what? Even though I don't get it, even though I don't like it, Trump is here. He's the president now, and I got to deal with it in some way. So I want to see it at the table. How do I have that? And so those people are the ones that I can talk to, and I can say, look, I understand where your interests are. I understand where Trump's interests are, the rhetoric of the campaign promises that he made. How do we make this work? How do we find a compromise where both sides can make it happy, can get something done? And that's what we're seeing right now with the health care bill that's been pushed back and forth. That's what we're seeing right now with the infrastructure deal. The legislative process, as everybody knows, is not pretty. Nobody likes to see how the sausage is made. But because you're seeing now, the Congress largely has lobbyists, right? There's no lobbyists for the President of the United States. For the United States, especially in this case, owes his presidency completely to the voters. There were no, massive, billionaire donors behind him. So when it comes to that, they're already out there. But as far as these corporations that are able to afford lobbyists, they write the legislation many, many times. However, there is no lobbying organization. There's no think tank for the people yet. And that's actually something that myself and a few other people have been in discussion on. And that's why, quite honestly, I think that we're seeing a lot of the stagnation here in the early days of the Trump presidency, because the legislation isn't written yet for so many of these radical, in a sense, ideas, because we're actually talking about radical change in the way that Washington works, in the relationship between the federal government and the states, the federal government and the people, the way that America relates to the rest of the world. Are we going to be this sort of like that, Trump wants to get rid of this sort of America is in charge of the whole world, responsible for global security kind of thing, and push it back to say, no, this is a shared responsibility. And you saw that with NATO. You also saw that with the Paris Climate Accord, where he said, this is not a good deal for the United States, and we're not doing it, period. I don't care what the rest of you have to say. This is not in our interest, and we're not doing it. We're going to stand up for ourselves rather than the as we all remember, the global citizen rhetoric of Barack Obama.
Do you see the Democrats and the left in general as a loyal opposition, or do you really see them as the enemy?
I wouldn't use that sort of like caustic term, but I would say that they are adversarial at this point. They're definitely adversarial. They are rivals. I don't see them putting country first. I don't see them coming to the table and saying we're willing to work. No, I'm saying as a whole, Joe Manchin of West Virginia comes to mind. There are a lot of Democrats. Michael Flynn, General Michael Flynn, Democrat. His entire family is Democrats. Nobody seems to remember that. That he's not a Republican at all. He was there for national security issues for his country rather than, any party. I think in a general sense, the voting base was the same. That there were a lot of Democrats for Trump because it was not a political election in that sense. It didn't fall along partisan lines. It fell along the sort of more populist versus elitist kind of mindset.
Mm-hmm. And finally, final question I have for you is, what are the biggest lessons you've learned over the last year since you've been so visible as part of Citizens for Trump, which is, of course, the name of the book also, and just in terms of becoming a celebrity?
I would definitely say that the other side is they are looking for any possible misstep. And when I see the amount of digging that goes into my old Facebook posts from like 2005 when I was in college, to people Googling stuff. Like I've seen my traffic ticket. Like I got a parking ticket in D.C. and somebody posted that online. Like, got you now, Posobiec. We know that you were parked here and in violation. And, a $30 ticket or something. And it's like to see that people are willing to go to that length to trip you up. On one hand, for me, it's been a lesson of, wow, you really need to watch what you're doing. Obviously, the violence that I saw at the Flora Ball, the violence I saw at the inauguration, and we're seeing at other events, the assaults that have been taking place on me, it's really taught me the importance of operational security, making sure that I do not, forecast my movements. I don't forecast where I'm going to be. And the same for my family as well, has received death threats at times. from people who would call me a Russian agent and every name under the sun, and that it is possible to go down a bad path. But on the other hand, I turn around and say, wow, if I'm getting this much just as me, imagine what it must be like to be President Trump and the amount of stuff that he has to deal with, and the fact that he comes out every day with a smile on his face and some trolly little impish tweet to set off the mainstream media, and it's mind-boggling to see that he's able to do it at that level.
Jack Posobiec, author of Citizens for Trump, which you can buy on Amazon, and which is having an official release date on Saturday. Thank you for coming on Backlash here on Shark Nation Radio. Hope to talk to you again.
Woo, thanks a lot, Adam.